Shalom, everybody, and thank you so much, Avi, for being such a clear voice against anti-Semitism and for being such an important voice in communicating what's happening in Israel to diaspora Jews and to everywhere in the world. So toda rabah, such an important work. So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being with all of you here this evening, and I'd like to thank the organizers very much for inviting me to lead this important panel. Before we start the panel, a couple of opening words to set the stage for our conversations, and I'd also like to share briefly some of what ADL does in the field of online hate, which is a lot, but probably a big challenge for all of us. First and foremost, and Avi said that, but I think it should be clearly stated, words lead to deeds. While the online sphere is mostly a field of rhetoric and harassment, make no mistake, what happens online makes its way to the real world. We're not only talking about ideas, we're confronted with record levels of hate across the internet, hate that too often turns into real-world violence and danger in Jewish and non-Jewish communities. So it's important to acknowledge that online harassment can have devastating consequences, harming individuals and communities. It causes emotional distress, reputational and economic harm, and sometimes even withdrawal from online spaces. And as I said, it can easily spill into offline attacks, especially against marginalized groups. And that's not only Jews, but also women and LGBTQ+ people of colors, Muslims, and of course, as we're talking in this evening, Jews. As Avi said, we're witnessing something which we describe as a tsunami of anti-Semitism worldwide. I can hardly think of one Jewish community, one country where there's a Jewish community that didn't see a rise of hundreds of percentages in anti-Semitic incidents. So it's a lot, it's everywhere. If you see the numbers, it's really scary. We're talking about 1,000% rise in anti-Semitic incidents in France, in Germany 300%, in Austria 320%, in the US 140%, and so on. So it goes on, and every country is seeing a rise in anti-Semitic incidents. But we're also confronted now with the new front of AI, and I'd like to address that briefly. We're now 8.5 months into the war. It's also important to mention that the October 7th massacre and Israel's military operations in Gaza have provoked urgent questions about the role of AI in online hate and misinformation. Newly launched generative AI tools like OpenAI's ChatGPT risk lowering bars to creating and spreading hateful content and disinformation, including anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and election disinformation. ADL found in November 2023 that such tools are already undermining the public trust in the reliability of information available online. Before we dive deep into the panel, a little bit of data from ADL's recent annual survey. In 2024, the rate of severe online hate and harassment increased across the board from 18% to 22%. The findings were concerning among marginalized groups. And let's talk about Jews for a second. So 34% of Jews who were harassed online reported being targeted because of their religion. 63% felt less safe compared with last year. 41% changed their online behavior to avoid being recognized as Jewish. Now look, this is something that we're seeing in other spheres as well. For example, on college campuses where Jews feel the need to hide their Jewish identity. We found before the war, way before the war, in 2021, we did a poll on college campuses, and we found that 15% of Jewish students hide their Jewish identity on campus because they are afraid of this identification with Israel and so on, and the numbers are much higher following October 7th. So that behavior of hiding your identity as a Jew is something which is common to some spaces. In terms of the platforms, so Facebook remains the most common platform where harassment was experienced, 61% of harassment, while incidents of harassment rose on WhatsApp in 11% 14% to 25%, and on Telegram from 7%, almost double, to 13%. ADL's mandate in the field is to limit the proliferation of anti-Semitism and hate online. So obviously, we're realistic, and we're not talking about stopping anti-Semitism online, but really limiting the scope of the phenomenon and its spread. We're trying to put pressure on the platforms to enforce their own regulations, and we have to remember that the platforms themselves have to always catch up with the user's pace and constantly create new technologies so they can enforce their own regulations. Second is also to put pressure on legislators, so we know that legislation is not talking about norms, but really rules on how to behave, rules that can be enforced, and that's probably very important. The third thing that we do is create public awareness on those issues. We believe that there's no substitute for education and for critical thinking. People have to be aware of the information they consume, the information that they spread, but users have also to know the limitations of the platforms. For example, just ChatGPT is not a search engine, and this is actually a misuse of the platform, so people have to know how to use the platforms. But there's also a responsibility for the platforms to provide more accurate information, and we know that there will always be gray zones from a product perspective, but no less also from a content perspective. From a product perspective, we know that the more technologies exist, the more loopholes are developed. And from a content perspective, we're always confronted with the question about what the standards for anti-Semitism are. Our answer as an organization is the IRA definition, which serves as a great working tool that helps us to define what anti-Semitism is, but also what anti-Semitism is not. So responsibility of companies, but also major trends, challenges, and hopefully solutions in the panel that we're going to have right now. Let me just present the panelists. So first, Talor Cohen-Montmeyer, the founder and executive director of Cyberwell, the first ever open database dedicated to fighting online anti-Semitism. Talor, please join me to the stage. Stav Cohen-Lasry. Stav is the co-founder of Savvy.ai, which is an educational platform promoting Israeli Jewish advocacy. We can have a whole session talking about Israeli Jewish advocacy. Stav, please. Stav? Stav. I was thinking that I saw Stav. Stav, please. You should all join the stage. And Maya Shabi, senior risk strategist at Eversea. Maya has expertise in counterterrorism, geopolitical risk assessment, and mitigation in the intelligence sector, and she tracks emerging online threats with the goal of leveraging technology to beat bad actors at their own game. Please, all join me to the stage.